Hey guys, welcome back to GX Story Sleeping. Tonight we head somewhere dry, like Sahara dry. You're waking up under a sky so blue it hurts your eyeballs. The kind of sky that doesn't know what clouds are. Your lips are already cracked, your tongue feels like beef jerky, and you haven't even stood up yet. You're lying on a mat woven from date palm fronds, baking in a medieval North African morning. The air? Hotter than your grandma's attic in August. There's no fan. No iced coffee, just the ever-present hiss of wind pushing hot sand across your sunburned feet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing who's joining these late-night time travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up. Mistake. Your head throbs instantly. You're wrapped in what's left of a wool tunic that smells suspiciously like goat, and your skin is already pink despite sleeping under a crude canopy of stretched leather. The sun is brutal, just above the horizon and already flexing. The year? Sometime in the 13th century. The place? A minor caravan station on the edge of the Sahara. The situation? You're not thriving. Even in the best case scenario, the Sahara in the Middle Ages wasn't a place you stumbled through. You were either born into it or thoroughly trained for it. Otherwise, you'd be dead by lunch. And the word shelter here doesn't mean air conditioning and a bed. It means maybe a hide tent, maybe a crumbling mud structure if you're lucky. Right now you're surrounded by coarse sand, cracked clay, and a few thorny shrubs pretending to be trees. You try to stand. Your legs scream in protest. Your calves are already sore from the one walk you took yesterday, and there's a sunburn creeping up your thighs in the exact shape of your terribly wrapped linen wraps. A passing boy, maybe 12, wearing indigo-dyed robes, laughs at you without shame. It's fine. You deserve it. You look like a raisin in the process of rehydrating. And here's the thing. The Sahara isn't a static desert. It's dynamic. The dunes shift with each wind, and whole trade routes vanish under blowing sand. Even back then, geographers and local guides debated over the reliability of the paths. What was a safe crossing last year might be a death trap now. That's comforting. The settlement you're in isn't even a village, more like a cluster of tents and rock structures run by nomadic Berber traders. They speak Tamazight, not Arabic, not French, and definitely not English. You smile awkwardly at a group roasting something unidentifiable over an open fire. They gesture vaguely toward a water jar. You go for it like a thirsty raccoon. Another mistake. The water is warm, funky, stored in a porous clay jug that lets some of it evaporate to cool down, but not enough to kill whatever's growing in it. Still, you sip. You have to. Back then, the Sahara wasn't entirely empty. Far from it. Trade routes like the famous trans-Saharan ones buzzed with caravans carrying gold, salt, slaves, and textiles. But outside those bustling arteries, vast stretches were simply barren. You're currently in one of those off-brand zones where nothing happens is the best-case scenario. You squint at the horizon. Mirage? Probably. Bandits? Possibly. Weird horned lizard sunbathing on a rock? Definitely. One of them stares at you like it knows something. Maybe it does. Oh, and sunscreen? Forget it. Your medieval options are limited to mud smears, robes, or, get this, crocodile dung mixed with olive oil. That's a real thing some North African communities experimented with. Fringe? Absolutely. Effective? Debatable. You're beginning to think the dung might be the least weird part of your day. A scrawny dog with one ear trots past you, heading toward a pile of camel dung like it's late for a meeting. Somewhere nearby, a rooster that clearly didn't get the memo about where you are lets out a broken crow. You sigh and pull the hood of your robe lower, praying it blocks at least some of the solar punishment raining down. You were supposed to soak in the atmosphere. You're soaking all right, in your own sweat. You haven't even made it to breakfast, and your medieval Sahara vacation is already a fever dream. Water? What water? You're already rethinking your life choices. It's been maybe, 2 hours since the sun showed up, and your mouth is dry enough to scrape the vowels off your tongue. You eye that clay jug again, now crusted with sand like it's wearing a protective layer of disappointment. One of the local women notices and gestures toward a path that winds behind a cluster of acacia trees. Trees so stingy with their shade that you feel personally insulted. That's where the water comes from, apparently. Comes from being the optimistic phrase here. You shuffle that way, your sandals, more like strips of leather pretending to be footwear, barely keeping the sand from chewing your feet raw. With each step, the desert reminds you it doesn't care. About your hydration, about your comfort, about your TikTok algorithm. You crest a rise, and there it is. A small, shallow basin in the rock where water has pooled, or collected, or maybe been squeezed out of the universe by sheer will. There's a line. A donkey is drinking. A small child is scooping some into a gourd. You wait, and when your turn comes, you lower your face toward the murky puddle and hesitate. Floating bits. Mosquito larvae? Maybe. Or possibly just dreams. You go for it. A tiny sip. Warm. Metallic. You'd cry if you had the moisture. In medieval Saharan life, water wasn't just a resource. It was the defining factor in whether or not people could live in a certain area. Oases weren't just cool little pit stops. They were the literal reason entire cities existed. Take the famous city of Gadames, a medieval hub built around a miraculous underground spring. Without it, just another patch of sand. But even then, the distribution was uneven, seasonal, debated. One explorer's miraculous spring was another's suspicious mud hole. You remember reading something once, maybe in a documentary or a bored late-night rabbit hole, about how some nomadic tribes could smell water from miles away. And now, as you lean over this foul little puddle, you wonder if that was myth or just better survival instincts than yours. The Tuareg, often called the Blue Men of the Sahara, because their indigo-dyed robes stained their skin, knew these lands like a second language. Their knowledge of secret wells, hidden crevices, and rock formations that meant dig here or die, kept entire caravans alive. You, meanwhile, are 3 steps away from licking a dew-covered stone like it's a gourmet popsicle. A small boy with a long stick points to your water skin, currently deflated and flopping at your waist like a sad balloon. He fills it for you from the basin, but not before giving you a look that says, "You wouldn't last a week." Fair. He's right. He's probably been navigating this terrain better than you, since he could walk. You, meanwhile, are internally screaming about parasites and wondering how long it takes for dysentery to kick in. Here's a fun fact. Some medieval Saharan travelers packed emergency camel bladders, not for peeing, for water storage, soft, portable, and allegedly non-leaky if you tied them right. Of course, the smell probably made drinking from them a test of willpower, which, let's be honest, you're failing. You trudge back to camp, swinging your freshly filled water skin like it's a trophy. Only it weighs about 5 pounds, and every step pulls at your sunburnt shoulder. The leather straps dig into your collarbone. You're sweating so much, you suspect you're just a mobile desalination unit now. Salt's coming out of you faster than it's being put in. You sit under a scrap of shade, and finally, take a long drink from the water skin. You brace for taste. It's not the worst. Slightly gritty, earthy, like the memory of rain filtered through a goat's armpit. But it's wet, and at this point, that's luxury. Passing trader waves at you and mutters something about the next well being 2 days from here. 2 days. You stare at your water skin, then at the sun, then at your already dry lips. You might make it, but also, maybe not. Sand in every orifice. It starts as a tickle, just a faint whisper of grit in your ear. Then another gust of wind picks up and slaps you in the face with a wall of airborne sand. Welcome to the Sahara's daily exfoliation session. It's not even noon, and already you feel like you're being slow roasted in a sandblaster. You turn your face, squinting under the hood of your robe, but it's no use. The sand gets everywhere. In your ears, in your socks, if you're still stubborn enough to wear them, between your teeth. You blow your nose and a small dune comes out. And yes, you're already intimately aware that some of this fine Saharan powder has found its way into more personal places. You adjust your tunic and grimace. There's no dignity in sand rash. The Sahara isn't just a big desert, by the way. It's 1,000 different micro tears held together by heat. Some parts are gravel plains, others jagged rock fields. But it's the ergs, those endless seas of soft dunes, that really do the psychological damage. In the Middle Ages, these dunes could swallow entire paths in a single sandstorm, and it was an ongoing debate among local guides and geographers whether certain routes even existed anymore. One man's shortcut was another man's mirage-filled death trap. Today, the wind has you in its sights. You wrap your face tighter with your headscarf, copying the locals, but it just makes you feel like a slightly less elegant burrito. Every time you blink, sand grinds against your eyeballs. Your mouth tastes like ash and regret. You glance up and spot a caravan passing in the distance. Just silhouettes moving slowly across the shimmering horizon. They move like ghosts. They don't stop. You envy their apparent immunity to this nonsense. One of the locals hands you a cloth and gestures at your feet. You nod, not really sure what the protocol is, but follow along. Turns out, wrapping your sandals in extra strips of cloth can help keep the worst of the sand out. Too bad no one told you that yesterday. Your heels are raw, your toenails are wearing tiny hats of dust, and your once white socks are now the color of despair. Here's the fringe detail for the day. In some medieval Saharan cultures, people believed that sandstorms were caused by angry spirits, or jinn, unleashing their fury across the land. There were even whispered tales of entire camps being swallowed during the night, the dunes reshaped by invisible hands. Some say the Sahara moves with intent. That's not exactly scientifically backed, but standing in this skin-flaying gust, it's hard to argue. You try to rinse your eyes with a drop of water, but the liquid evaporates before it even hits your lashes. Cool. You blink rapidly, trying to decide if the figures you see on the horizon are real people or another mirage. The heat waves make everything shimmer like you're trapped inside a lava lamp. At one point, the wind dies down. Briefly, you relax thinking it might be over, but then it returns with a vengeance, hurling sand into your sleeves and collar like it's trying to write a message in Morse code on your skin. You scream internally. The Tuareg, with their flowing tagelmusts, those layered veils wrapped strategically around the face, don't even flinch. They've mastered the art of breathing through cloth, walking in sand without sinking, and somehow always looking cool while doing it. You, meanwhile, are halfway to becoming a living statue, permanently sandblasted into a look of mild panic. You crouch behind a rock, hoping for a moment of stillness. Instead, a small scorpion crawls by, unfazed. Of course, it probably thrives in this. You, on the other hand, are one sandstorm away from losing your sense of self. And just when you think it's over, you shift your pack and whoosh, a fresh cloud of sand falls from the folds of your robe straight into your undergarments. Fantastic. You lean back, defeated, and whisper to the desert, I get it. You win. The wind howls in reply. Food fit for a desperate goat. Your stomach growls, not politely, not a gentle reminder. This is a full-throated roar of protest, the kind that suggests your digestive system has filed a complaint with upper management. You dig through the cloth pouch slung over your shoulder and pull out a few sad dates, their skins wrinkled beyond recognition. They squish slightly between your fingers like forgotten Halloween candy. But hey, natural sugar, fiber, trace minerals, gourmet by desert standards. You bite into one, trying not to think about the possibility of sand lodged inside. You fail. It crunches. Whether that's a pit fragment or an unwelcome grain of Sahara seasoning, you'll never know. In medieval desert culture, dates were the MVPs. High calorie, long lasting, and grown right there in oasis groves. Whole economies revolved around them. There are even records of camel caravans carrying literal tons of dried dates across the dunes. But variety wasn't really on the menu out here. You weren't exactly spoiled for choice. One of the Tuareg traders squats next to you, grinning, and pulls a bundle of cloth from his saddlebag. Inside, strips of dried meat. Thin, leathery, probably goat. He offers you a piece. You accept because pride is meaningless when your stomach is threatening mutiny. You chew, and chew, and chew. It's like gnawing on a sandal that's been sun-dried for 2 weeks and possibly cured in shoe polish. The flavor is faint, salt, smoke, a hint of something you hope isn't fur, but it's protein. Your body lights up like a medieval torch, grateful for the calories. You nod in thanks, lips stuck to your teeth from dehydration. For a brief moment, you forget that this jerky could be harboring any number of microbial freeloaders. Back then, food safety wasn't so much a practice as a gamble. You either ate or you didn't. Cooking temperatures were more educated guesses than scientific measurements. Salt and smoke were the preservatives of choice. And yes, people got sick. Often. But they also developed stomachs of steel. Out of necessity. Now, if you were part of a better-off caravan, say one backed by a wealthy merchant or a religious pilgrimage, you might have access to millet cakes, fermented camel milk, or even flatbreads cooked under hot coals. But for now, you're chewing mystery meat with a side of sand. Here's your quirky historical tidbit for today. Some desert travelers in medieval times believed that eating certain lizards, especially the daub, a fat-tailed species, provided dry energy that protected against exhaustion and the evil eye. You glance at the fire pit nearby and realize with a mild sense of unease that something suspiciously reptilian is being grilled. You politely pretend not to notice. A pot is passed around, clay, blackened with soot, full of something thick and beige. It's a grain porridge. You ask what kind. The answer sounds like whatever we had last week. You dip your fingers in and scoop a mouthful. It's warm, starchy, and tastes like boiled sock. But again, calories are calories. There's a strange comfort in watching how efficiently these people function. Meals are brief, communal, and always eaten with hands. Usually the right one. You're clumsy, fumbling with finger portions, and spill half your share on your robes. A goat immediately moves in and starts licking your knee. You let it. Maybe you'll get a thank you bleat. Nearby, an older woman grinds something with a mortar and pestle, grains or herbs or both. The rhythmic sound is oddly soothing, and for a moment you could almost believe you're in a peaceful place, until someone nearby belches with such force that it echoes off the rocks. You blink, no one reacts. Apparently it's just digestion with attitude. As the meal winds down, the food is packed away with practiced care. Nothing wasted. Crumbs brushed into the sand. Water rationed for rinsing hands and little else. No dessert, unless you count those 2 sticky dates still stuck to your molars. And you're still kind of hungry. But out here, that's normal. Full is a luxury. Nourished is enough. You lie back, hand on your growling stomach, and sigh. You'd kill for a protein bar. Maybe even one of those cardboardy ones that taste like drywall. Instead, you close your eyes and try to ignore the sound of the goat chewing your robe. When the sun cooks your shadow, you wake up sweating. And not just sweaty, boiled. The kind of heat that feels personal. Like the sun has a grudge against you and decided to take it out on every inch of exposed skin. You shift slightly, and the fabric of your robe peels off your back like grilled cheese from foil. Lovely. You step out from the pitiful shade of your tarp and immediately regret it. The light hits your face like a slap, and you squint so hard your eyelids feel like sandpaper. Your shadow is so crisp it looks painted onto the sand. And here's the kicker. It's hot. Not the sun, not the sand. Your shadow is hot. It radiates warmth like it's been storing resentment all morning. In the medieval Sahara, the sun wasn't just inconvenient. It was a daily trial. Travelers would plan entire routes around its wrath. March at dawn. Rest through noon. Move again at dusk. The midday lull was sacred. Not for prayer, not for reflection, but because any idiot moving around at high noon had a death wish. But you didn't listen. You're that idiot. Heatstroke wasn't a concept they had a neat word for back then. You just start acting weird. Sweating, then not sweating. Dizzy, confused. Maybe start talking to rocks. And sure, some of the local beliefs blame desert spirits or curses for the strange behavior. But modern hindsight suggests your brain was just being slow roasted like a festival goat. Even now, sitting still, you feel your core temperature rising. Your mouth is dry again. No surprise there. But now your limbs feel like they're vibrating. You try to sip some water, but it's gone warm. Almost scalding. Like someone left a tea bag in your stomach lining. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Ancient desert travelers would sometimes wrap damp cloths around their necks or heads, hoping for the magic of evaporative cooling. And yes, it worked, briefly. But unless you had a spring in your pocket, you didn't. Those cloths dried out fast and left you with a slightly damp sunburn for your efforts. Desert heat isn't just surface level either. Rocks heat up during the day, absorbing the sun's fury, then slowly release that heat well into the night. That means even sitting down feels like perching on a stove burner. You test the sand with your fingers and pull back immediately. Nope, not today, Satan. Your quirky tidbit for the day. Some camel drivers reportedly use camel dung as makeshift insoles because it absorbed heat better than cloth. You briefly consider this, glance at the nearest camel, and decide that you're not that desperate. Yet. A trader nearby points to the sky and mutters something about the death hour. You assume that's poetic. It is not. It's their term for noon to 3 p.m. That brutal window where the sun is high, the air barely moves, and travelers are most likely to keel over. You glance at the sky. Judging by the sun's placement, it's exactly that time. You retreat under your tarp, clutching your water skin like a medieval security blanket, and fan yourself with your hand, which helps about as much as fanning a volcano. Then comes the mirage. You spot it, a shimmer on the horizon, a glimmer of blue, a pool, maybe a well, maybe a figment of your broken brain. You blink, still there. It ripples gently, like it knows you're watching. You squint harder, but the light dances, mocks, and vanishes. Classic. Scholars still debate how medieval desert dwellers interpreted mirages. Some believed they were tricks of light, others swore they were the work of desert spirits luring the weak to their doom. A few even thought they were memories of lost oases, visions from the past trying to reclaim their place in the sand. You, on the other hand, just feel tricked. You lie back on your pack and drape a cloth over your face. It's too hot to be angry, too hot to move. The sun is baking you from the top, the ground is broiling you from the bottom, and your brain is somewhere in between, trying to remember how air conditioning works. You whisper to no one in particular, "I miss ceilings." The wind shifts slightly, hot and dry. It doesn't answer. Your water strategy is panic. You fumble for your water skin with the urgency of someone who just remembered what thirst feels like. It's warm. Again. You unscrew the cap and tilt it carefully, but only a few precious drops come out. They hit your tongue like gold melting in slow motion. You resist the urge to chug. You've made that mistake before. There are no do-overs in the desert. In medieval Sahara caravans, water wasn't just valuable, it was sacred. Every ounce was tracked like treasure. Wells and oases marked the route like lifelines, and missing one could mean days of agony. The Tuareg have words for different kinds of thirst. The manageable kind, the warning kind, and the kind you don't come back from. Guess which one you're spiraling toward. You look at the others. Calm. Unbothered. Their water skins still full. Why? Because they didn't take 6 nervous gulps every time the sun looked at them wrong. They sip, tiny mouthfuls, like water monks. You try to copy them now, but your tongue is already past the point of civility. It's shriveled up like beef jerky. The inside of your mouth feels like old parchment left in a bread oven. You'd trade your left shoe for a slushie. The guide points to a distant clump of date palms and mutters, "Agurm." That means an oasis. Possibly. Maybe. You squint toward the shimmering green smudge, and for the first time today, you feel something close to hope. Your steps quicken. Your lips crack when you smile, so you stop doing that. Here's a fun historical detail to distract you. Medieval Saharan trade routes were built around water access. Not sand, not safety, not speed. Water. Some routes were longer and more dangerous, but had more predictable well stops. Others were shorter, but gambling with every dry kilometer. And guess what? The map you don't have wouldn't help much anyway. Most waypoints were memorized, not written. Your guide is the map. You should be nicer to him. Half an hour later, you reach the oasis. And, well, yikes. It's real, technically. A few trees, a stagnant pond, a smell that suggests something died nearby and gave up hope. But there's water. Brown, warm, vaguely suspicious water. A local scoops some into a clay jug, adds a pinch of ash, swirls it, and lets it settle. That's your purification system. Don't ask questions. You get a sip. You hold it in your mouth like a relic. It's not good, but it's wet. That's enough. You feel a little less crispy already. And now for today's quirky tidbit. Some medieval travelers swore by a tactic called water fasting, deliberately avoiding water during the day to train the body to need less. It's unclear whether this was effective or just a slow route to dehydration-induced hallucinations. You try it for about 12 minutes and start seeing faces in the sand. It's fine. Your water skin is refilled with a suspicious pond blend. You mentally rename it camel broth and tuck it away. You also learn a new trick, wrapping a soaked cloth around the outside of your water skin. As the outer layer evaporates, the inside cools slightly. Desert science. Medieval edition. Later that day, a fellow traveler offers you a cup of something brewed, some kind of tea made from wild desert herbs. It tastes like boiled weeds and charcoal, but apparently helps with digestion and cooling the body. You try a sip, it burns your tongue. You smile anyway, because anything that isn't sand counts as luxury now. And here comes the scholarly debate of the day. Some argue that desert people drank much less water than modern humans do because of diet, adaptation, and learned restraint. Others think we've just become too hydrated for our own good. Either way, your body is definitely in the scream internally phase of thirst. You glance at your water skin again, unsure whether to ration or risk it. You take a tiny sip, just enough to wet your throat. It's not much, but for now, it's survival. Unwelcome guests, bugs, bites, and worse. You feel it before you see it. A sharp sting on your ankle. You slap instinctively and hit nothing but air. Then another nip, this time on your neck. You scratch, then pause, realizing with an odd mix of awe and dread that you're being eaten alive by something too small to identify and too fast to escape. Welcome to medieval Sahara nightlife population. Insects who couldn't care less about your personal space. You glance down. Ants. Big ones. With pinchers that look like they came from a smith's forge. One is dragging a piece of your bread crust into a hole the size of a coin. The others swarm around your sandals, clearly unimpressed by your fashion choices. You shake them off. They regroup. It's personal now. During the day, the bugs mostly hide from the heat, but once the sun dips, just a little. They arrive like they've got tickets to a buffet. You're the buffet. Your face itches. You scratch and feel a bump, then another, then 5. You're not even sure what bit you anymore. It could have been a mosquito, a flea, or something far worse, the humble sandfly. In medieval Saharan regions, sandflies weren't just annoying, they were dangerous. They carried leishmaniasis, a lovely little parasite that caused ulcers, fever, and, in the visceral form, sometimes death. And here you are, lying on the ground like a free lunch. You wrap your robe tighter and pull your headscarf low. One of the Tuareg men nearby rubs something on his skin, a dark, waxy paste. You ask what it is. He mutters something about oil and crushed herbs. Natural bug repellent. You lean in for a better look, and the smell hits you. Sharp, bitter, earthy. Possibly animal-based, probably dung-based. You back away slowly. Speaking of dung, here's a medieval desert beauty hack. Some women use crocodile dung, mixed with oils as sunscreen and bug repellent. Yep, that's the quirky tidbit of the day. Imagine slathering yourself in poo to keep the sunburn and sand fleas away, and you thought your last skincare product smelled weird. You lie back down, itchy, sweating, and now slightly paranoid. There's buzzing near your ear. You swat, and your hand comes back with something squashed. You don't look too closely. Night falls completely, and things get even weirder. Scorpions. The kind that glow under moonlight and look like they were designed by a horror movie prop artist. One scuttles by your bedroll. You don't scream. You simply stop breathing for a full minute and hope it has somewhere better to be. Thankfully, it vanishes under a rock. You now have a deep spiritual grudge against that rock. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Desert dwellers often slept on raised platforms or suspended mats to avoid night creepers, scorpions, snakes, beetles, you name it. You, however, are flat on the ground because someone forgot to pack your luxury hammock. A camel groans nearby. You startle. It's just shifting in its sleep. But for a moment, your brain suggested sand monster before correcting itself. That's how on edge you are. Every breeze is a hiss. Every crunch of sand is doom approaching. You're now fully aware that your survival odds rest heavily on the mercy of a few inches of woven fabric and sheer dumb luck. Then comes the scholars' debate. How much did medieval travelers actually fear bugs? Some writings hint at casual acceptance, just another inconvenience. Others describe elaborate charms, herbal mixes, and even ritual gestures to ward off insect-borne illness. One thing's for sure. They had a lot more tolerance than you do. You're one bite away from crying into your robes. You try sleeping with a cloth draped over your face. It helps. A little. You dream of air-conditioned hotel rooms with no-seam netting and bite-free naps. Then a beetle crawls across your foot and jolts you back to reality. You sit up, hug your knees, and rock gently. It's going to be a long night. Nightfall isn't rest. It's ambush time. The sun finally dips below the horizon, and you sigh in relief. But not for long, because in the medieval Sahara, night doesn't mean peace. It means shifting dangers. The bugs were just your welcome committee. Now comes the part where you remember that darkness has always been a predator's best friend. The temperature drops fast. You go from roasting to freezing in less time than it takes to mutter, "Why is the air attacking me?" Your robe, soaked with sweat all day, now clings to your body like ice. Your teeth chatter. Someone tosses a wool shawl over you. You accept it without pride. There's no fire. Fires attract attention, and in this time period, attention is rarely good. A tiny coal-lit lamp flickers on the far end of camp, casting just enough light to outline figures, but not enough to comfort you. Shadows stretch and distort. Shapes loom. You blink and hope they're just rocks, or sleeping camels, or rocks shaped exactly like crouching bandits. Because yes, bandits. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Saharan caravan routes were plagued by raiders, groups of armed thieves who knew the terrain better than anyone, often waiting for nightfall to strike. They wouldn't just take your goods. They'd take your camels, your water, your maps, your sense of hope, sometimes even your clothing, just to make the desert finish what they started. You clutch your bag tightly. Not that it holds anything valuable anymore, mostly crumbs and questionable water, but it feels like protection. A nearby guard adjusts his sword belt and disappears into the dark, presumably to keep watch. You silently hope he's the stays awake all night type. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval travelers believed that placing certain stones or symbols near their bedding would ward off human threats. One amulet was carved with an eye, meant to watch while you sleep. You wish you had 10 of those. Instead, you sleep with one eye half open and your sandal as a makeshift weapon. It's a terrible plan, but it's something. You finally lie down, attempting rest. But the sand is cold now, hard, unforgiving, and the desert, stripped of its golden glow, feels less like a natural wonder and more like a gaping, starless void. You stare up at the night sky, millions of stars glittering like ice chips. It's breathtaking, and also terrifying, because there's no ceiling, no walls, just endless openness. A wolf howls. You did not know wolves were a thing here. You check the shadows again. A soft rustling in the dark. Could be wind, could be something else. You reach for a nearby rock. It's warm from the day's heat, and oddly comforting, like holding a thermal panic button. Scholars still debate just how frequent these nighttime attacks were. Some say they were rare, more legend than reality. Stories spread to keep travelers sharp. Others argue they were common enough to shape the entire system of Saharan trade, forcing caravans to band together and hire guards, even at high cost. You hope it was mostly legend, but the way your guide keeps glancing into the dark with his hand on his blade doesn't feel like legend. Suddenly, there's shouting. Not near you, but not far either. Your body goes rigid. Someone grabs a weapon. You freeze, heart pounding like a drum. But the shouting dies off quickly. Probably a quarrel over sleeping space. Maybe, hopefully. You don't sleep that night. Not really. You drift, occasionally. But every time your body relaxes, some noise or movement jerks you back awake. You mentally draft your will on a scrap of cloth, just in case. And by the time the stars begin to fade and the horizon hints at pink, your body is still alert, but your brain has checked out. You've aged 5 years since sunset, and the sun hasn't even started punishing you again yet. Sunstroke isn't just a metaphor. The sun is back. It crests over the dunes like a flaming deity who heard you were talking trash last night. You sit up slowly, bones stiff, lips cracked, eyes swollen from a cocktail of poor sleep and sand grit. As your face meets the heat, your brain just goes, nope. You're already sweating before you stand. The wool shawl you clutched in the cold is now your enemy, but removing it means instant sunburn. Pick your fighter, desert hypothermia or solar death ray. You keep it draped around your shoulders like a confused vampire with a heat stroke. Here comes today's mainstream historical fact. Medieval travelers scheduled their day around the sun's wrath. Most caravans moved in the early morning and late afternoon, resting through the dead heat of midday under whatever shade they could find or make. A single square of canvas could mean the difference between consciousness and collapse. You've got your robe and blind optimism. You're walking now, each step heavier than the last. The sand is hotter than a stovetop. Through your thin sandals, you can feel it cooking. Literally, your feet sizzle like unfortunate pancakes. You try to walk on the shaded side of your camel, but the beast seems to resent you for sleeping badly and keeps shifting sides. Rude. A fellow traveler hands you a pinch of salt. You stare at it like, "Excuse me?" But he gestures for you to eat it. Turns out it's not some medieval prank. It's survival. Salt helps your body retain water, and losing too much through sweat without replenishment can knock you out faster than you can say, "Why did I come here again?" That pressure building behind your eyes, that's the early sign. The throbbing headache, the nausea, the weird sensation that your skin's not yours anymore. Yeah, that's sunstroke tapping politely on your temple before it kicks the door in. The quirky tidbit of the day. In some desert communities, people wore mirrored plates on their foreheads to reflect sunlight and protect their third eye from heat and spiritual interference. It's unknown whether the effect was physical or psychological, but at this point, you'd strap a disco ball to your face if it bought you 5 minutes of shade. You begin to stumble, not dramatically, just a small misstep here, a wobble there. You try to act casual, but your legs are moving like overcooked noodles. The guide notices. He hands you something wrapped in cloth. A date. Not a romantic evening. A literal fruit. You bite in. It's dense, sticky, and weirdly warm, but it gives you just enough sugar to keep going. You try to focus on the horizon, but it dances. Literally. Mirage time. You swear you see a pool of water out there, glimmering and rippling. You know it's a lie, but your brain throws a tantrum anyway. You blink hard. Still sand. Always sand. Scholars debate just how well medieval travelers cope with heat like this. Some argue their clothing and pacing help regulate body temperature efficiently. Others suggest that the human body doesn't really adapt. It just learns to suffer differently. Judging by your current state, which is 40% sweat and 60% despair, you are voting for the suffering camp. You finally reach a half-shaded rock formation where the caravan halts. It's not much, just enough to crouch beside and avoid direct sunlight. You flop down, breathing heavily, your robe stuck to your skin. Someone hands you water. You sip, then more salt, then another cursed date. You're not okay, but you're not collapsed yet, which around here basically means you're thriving. The sun watches, waiting. It's not done with you yet. You can't digest anything. You finally get a chance to eat something that doesn't taste like regret, and then promptly regret it. Your stomach, having been sloshing around on 2 sips of murky water and pure dread for the past 24 hours, is not amused by solid food. It growls, not with hunger, but with betrayal. The camp cook, who might also be the guide, the medic, and possibly a part-time magician, hands you a bowl of something thick and gray-brown. You ask what it is. He shrugs. Millet, maybe goat. That's all you get. You stare into the bowl, trying not to see shapes or movement. Mainstream historical fact of the moment. In the medieval Sahara, most caravan meals were small, simple, and functional. Porridge made from millet or sorghum, sometimes with dried meat or milk powder. No spice, no joy, just fuel. You lift the spoon to your mouth and pretend you're on a cooking show. Earthy. Notes of camel breath. Your stomach clenches as the warm paste hits it. It's like introducing a house cat to a fire alarm. The rebellion begins immediately. A few bites in and you're not sure whether to keep eating or just lie down and whisper apologies to your intestines. Still, you need the calories. No fuel, no walking. No walking, no water, no water. Well, you've seen that spiral already. So you force down another scoop. One of the Tuareg travelers nearby offers you a tiny ball of something darker, tougher, and intensely aromatic. You bite in cautiously. It's dried meat, maybe lamb, maybe mystery. It's been sun-cured, coated in herbs, and tastes like leather dipped in oregano. But it's protein, and weirdly comforting in a primal way. You chew slowly, too fast, and it might come right back. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, medieval Saharan travelers carried a powder made from crushed locusts, dried dates, and fat, a kind of proto-energy bar. High in calories, low in taste. And yes, bugs were just food. Not a dare. You eye a grasshopper hopping by. Not yet. About 10 minutes later, the full horror begins. Your stomach is staging a full protest. You curl slightly, hands on your knees, as a series of gurgles louder than your thoughts ripple through your abdomen. Everyone pretends not to notice. It's a polite culture, but your insides are screaming in a universal language. Here comes the debate. Some scholars believe medieval desert peoples had stronger digestive systems due to constant exposure to rough, unfiltered food sources. Others argue it wasn't about strength, it was just a different standard of misery. They got sick too. They just didn't have the luxury of stopping. You, dear traveler, do not have a medieval gut. You have a modern digestive tract that once got upset over gas station sushi. So when the cramps start, you immediately scout for privacy. Spoiler, there is none. The Sahara is very big and very flat. There are dunes, yes, but no trees, no outhouses, no polite signs saying restroom this way. You shuffle behind a boulder the size of an ottoman and try to maintain some dignity. The sand is hot. The experience is humbling. The phrase leave no trace takes on a whole new meaning. Afterward, you rejoin the caravan looking like someone who's just wrestled with their own biology and lost. You sip some of your now body temperature water and force yourself to nibble another date. One of the locals hands you a sprig of mint. You chew it gratefully. It doesn't fix anything, but at least it tastes like civilization. For the rest of the day, you move carefully. Every jolt could restart the revolution in your gut. You envy the others. How are they walking, laughing, even singing? Is this what adaptation looks like? Or are they just too dehydrated to care? You, however, are now living minute to minute. Your survival depends on salt, dates, and not trusting any food that jiggles. Even your clothes want to betray you. Your clothes seemed like a good idea. Light, breathable, desert appropriate. You even took care to wrap your head properly in a scarf like the guides showed you. But after 3 days in the medieval Sahara, your outfit has become an enemy disguised as a second skin. The tunic you're wearing is soaked with sweat, then baked dry, then soaked again. It's now stiff in places and suspiciously crusty in others. There's sand in every fold, every crease, in the seams, under your belt, in places you didn't think sand could access without surgical tools. You shift uncomfortably, and it feels like exfoliating your entire body with powdered glass. Mainstream historical fact here. Desert peoples like the Tuareg wore layers of loose-fitting robes made from indigo-dyed cloth. These weren't just stylish. They reflected sunlight, trapped sweat to cool the body through evaporation, and even acted as bug barriers. The indigo often rubbed off onto the skin, earning the Tuareg the nickname Blue People of the Desert. You, however, look more like patchy, beige and splotchy person of confusion. You try adjusting your scarf, only to find the skin underneath is already sunburned. There's a fine red line across your forehead where the fabric shifted yesterday. It's itchy. Everything is itchy. You're not even sure if it's the sand, the heat rash, or a mild allergic reaction to the mystery herb someone rubbed on you to help. Either way, you're about 5 seconds from tearing your robe off and running into the dunes like a gremlin. A fellow traveler chuckles at your attempts to desand your sleeves. He shows you how to tie your outer robe differently, pulling one end tighter across the chest, then looping the sash higher to keep it off your waist. You follow his lead, and it helps. Slightly. But the damage is already done. Your thighs are chafed. Your armpits feel like they've been sandblasted. And your boots? Let's not even talk about your boots. Quirky tidbit of the day. Medieval Saharan traders often stuffed their shoes with goat hair or thick cloth to cushion the feet from shifting sand and heat. You try adding a spare sock to yours and instantly feel 1% less miserable. Victory. And then it happens. Your robe tears. It's a small rip, right at the seam of your underarm, but it might as well be a canyon. You feel air hit your skin in a place that's already raw, and you nearly whimper. There are no spare clothes, no sewing kits, no medieval Target. Someone hands you a thin leather thong, and you awkwardly knot it around the tear like a fashion-forward disaster survivor. This leads to a deeper problem: hygiene. You resolve to never complain about GPS again. As the day ends, you find the next rest stop marked by a lone, gnarled tree. No signposts, no flags. Just a tree leaning like it gave up on life centuries ago. But everyone in the group nods. This is the place. You sit, defeated but present. Your clothes itch, your feet throb. Your internal organs are still playing musical chairs. But you're not lost. Not really. You're just navigationally humbled. Thirst makes you hallucinate weird things. The thirst isn't just physical anymore. It's psychological, existential. You're not just dehydrated, you've become thirst. You are thirst, wandering the Sahara like a cracked porcelain bowl in search of a drop. Your mouth is dry, obviously, but now your tongue feels like someone sandpapered it. Your lips, split. Your eyes, scratchy. Your sweat, gone. And that's the worst part, because sweating means your body's still trying. No sweat means it gave up trying. You're now in conservation mode, otherwise known as the prequel to delirium. Let's drop in your mainstream historical fact before things get too weird. Water was the single most valuable commodity in medieval Sahara travel. Caravans often planned entire routes around known wells and oases. Water was rationed precisely, sometimes as little as 1 liter per day per person. It was stored in goatskin bags that smelled like, well, goats. But drinkable is drinkable. You, however, are dreaming of Sprite, a cold, bubbling, lemon-lime fantasy that's absolutely not here. And just like that, it starts. The hallucinations. At first, it's subtle. You think you see someone waving in the distance. But no, it's a cactus-shaped shadow dancing in the heat. Then you're sure you hear a stream. Not water trickling, actual babbling brook sounds. You turn. Just wine brushing sand over rocks. But for a moment you swear it was a mountain spring. You start craving things that don't even exist anymore, like vending machines or cucumber spa water. Here comes your quirky tidbit. Some Tuareg elders believed that certain desert hallucinations were spirits, or jinn testing your resolve. They didn't always treat visions as purely medical or madness-induced. You'd be tempted to agree, especially after you mistake your own shadow for a robed figure offering you iced tea. It's not. It's just Gerald. Remember Gerald? That rock from earlier? He's back. You try sipping your water. There's barely any left in your skin bag. The few drops hit your tongue like a religious experience. But they're warm. Not just warm. Desert warm. You miss cold water so much it feels personal. Your stomach clenches, wanting more, but you can't. Because now water is a math problem. Every drop has to be calculated. How many hours until the next well? How much will your camel drink before you can? And here's the open scholarly debate. How did medieval travelers manage hydration long term? Some suggest they camel tanked before journeys, drinking multiple liters at once and letting their bodies store it. Others argue they adapted through diet, eating watery fruits or porridge to supplement fluids. But there's no consensus on how sustainable it really was. The records don't say, oh, by the way, I only peed twice this month. You haven't peed all day. That should alarm you, but your brain is busy narrating a strange documentary about water bottles, out loud, to no one. One of the guides glances at you sideways. You smile weakly and mutter something about electrolytes. They offer you a lump of salty date paste. You chew it slowly. Somehow, your throat works. Night finally starts to fall. The moment the sun dips, your skin feels relief like it's exhaling. The stars start to flicker overhead, and your thirst goes from aggressive to dull. The hallucinations ease up. You blink. Gerald is still just a rock. You are, by all definitions, still alive. Someone in the caravan murmurs a prayer. Others unroll mats and prepare for rest. You do the same, lying back, swallowing dryly, and listening to the wind ruffle the dunes like an old blanket. You dream that night, not of cool lakes or showers or rivers, but of standing in line at a water fountain, a long line with no end. You laugh in your sleep. Nightfall brings no peace, just different hazards. The sun finally vanishes, and the Sahara exhales a cold breath straight from the void. You expect comfort. Instead, you get slapped by a temperature drop so sharp it feels like someone switched your body settings from broil to icebox without asking. Your sweat, now cold and sticky, clings to you like regret. You shiver. You're exhausted beyond belief. Thirsty, filthy, slightly sun-poached, and yet sleep seems unlikely. Because night in the medieval Sahara is not about rest. It's just a whole new flavor of survival. Let's start with the basic, undeniable, historical fact. The Sahara's diurnal temperature range is brutal. It's not uncommon for midday heat to reach over 100 degrees, 38 degrees, and nighttime temps to plummet below 40 degrees, parana 4 degrees. And medieval caravans? They didn't have heated tents or insulated sleeping bags. If you were lucky, you had a wool blanket, some goat hair padding, and a warm camel to park next to. You wrap your thin cloak tighter, curling into the smallest shape your aching joints will allow. Around you, the caravan becomes a temporary village of quiet rituals. Tea being brewed over tiny fires, travelers whispering prayers, and camels grunting their bedtime opinions. The stars blaze overhead, clearer and sharper than you've ever seen. You'd be awestruck if your teeth weren't audibly chattering. Here's your fringe tidbit of the evening. Some desert nomads use hot stones buried beneath sand to warm their sleeping areas. You notice one of the older guides doing exactly this, burying a heated rock where he plans to sleep. You're tempted to ask if you can share. He sees your desperate look and just tosses you a second stone. It's about as warm as a forgotten slice of pizza, but you hug it like it's a newborn puppy. And yet, even bundled, you can't relax. Because nightfall doesn't mean safety, it just means new dangers. There's the cold, of course, but also predators, jackals, hyenas, the occasional opportunistic snake slithering under bedrolls for warmth. You heard stories earlier from the group's cook, something about a desert fox stealing someone's boots while they slept. You laughed at the time. Now you wedge your boots under your armpit like precious cargo. The noises are strange too. You expect silence, but the desert is never truly quiet. Wind moans low across the dunes, rattling tents and pulling on cloaks like a needy ghost. Camels groan in the distance with unsettling human-like moans. Someone snores. Someone else coughs. A harsh, dry rattle that makes you grateful for your one swallow of warm goat water. Here's your open, scholarly debate of the night. Did medieval travelers sleep in shifts or all at once? Some scholars believe they were always sentries awake, guarding against bandits or animals. Others argue most slept as one unit, relying on perimeter setups and animals to warn of trouble. Either way, you don't feel particularly guarded as you lay there, blanket half tucked, trying to remember if you zipped your pouch of dates closed. At some point, you doze off. You wake a short while later, unsure of how much time has passed. Your body aches. Your nose is cold. You think you hear distant drumming, but it's probably your heartbeat in your ears. You sit up briefly to adjust your scarf, then lie back down. You try to focus on the stars. There are so many, uncountable. You spot Orion's belt, unchanged for 1,000 years. That's comforting at least. You remind yourself that someone lay on this very same sand centuries ago, staring up at that same trio of stars, also wondering whether that smell was their own feet or the camels. Eventually, dawn edges in, not with color, but with the softest blue-gray hum, like the desert is inhaling again. Fires are rekindled, blankets shaken out. You're not rested, but you're up, because the sun's about to return, and with it, your daily dose of misery. Night in the medieval Sahara didn't kill you, but it came close. You're still days from safety, and barely holding on. Morning in the Sahara arrives, without ceremony. No birds chirping, no gentle breeze lifting curtains, just a gray horizon, the sound of sand shifting, and the unshakable awareness that your legs feel like they've been traded for driftwood. You try to stretch, but everything aches. Your back protests. Your knees threaten open rebellion. Your stomach grumbles with a sort of hollow, echoing resentment, like it's filing formal complaints against your entire existence. You haven't had a real meal in days, a week. Time is starting to warp, and yet you stand. Or rather, you rise into a lurch, like a camel learning to walk. The caravan stirs around you. Fires are out, packs are tightened, scarves wrapped, Camels adjusted and groaning like hungover roommates. Another day begins, because of course it does. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Trans-Saharan journeys could last weeks, sometimes months, depending on the route. The infamous Tagaza salt caravans might travel over 1,000 miles round trip, hauling tons of salt slabs, essential for preserving food in medieval cities. Merchants, pilgrims, and guides formed long snaking caravans across terrain that was unforgiving at best and apocalyptic at worst. You, meanwhile, are carrying nothing but body odor and regret. And you still have days left. The pace today is slower. You notice fewer jokes among the caravan, less chatter. People are conserving energy, lips cracked, expressions tight. It's not that anyone's giving up. It's just the grim silence of endurance. Everyone's operating on survival autopilot now. A guide passes you a sliver of dried meat and a pinch of gritty millet. It tastes like salt and sand, but it's calories. You force yourself to chew, wondering how your teeth got this loose. You'd cry, but that requires moisture. Here's a quirky tidbit to chew on, literally. Some medieval desert travelers used animal fat as lip balm and nose moisturizer to prevent cracking in extreme dry air. You, unfortunately, didn't bring any goat tallow chapstick. You lick your lips and regret it instantly. Salt. Always salt. Around midday, the heat is apocalyptic again. Shade is gone. Vision swims. You find yourself talking to the sand like it's a helpful co-pilot. Just over that ridge, you mutter. We're close. You aren't. But hope is a mental game, and lying to yourself helps. The camels, meanwhile, plod on like they've unlocked a cheat code for desert life. One of them turns and sneezes on you. You blink, too tired to be offended. Here's the open scholarly debate for your current spiral into desert madness. Was there ever a consistent, safe route across the Sahara? Some scholars argue that well-established paths between places like Timbuktu, Gat, and Gadames were patrolled and protected, especially under powerful empires like Mali. Others claim these routes were constantly shifting due to politics, raiders, and environmental change. Basically, you could have a map, a plan, and still vanish into the sand. The terrain changes again. Less dune, more gravel plain. The monotony is even worse. It's like walking across the world's largest parking lot. Nothing to look at, nothing to count. Just heat and time. You lose yourself in strange memories. An air conditioner, a garden hose, the way ice clinks in a glass. These feel like dreams now. Someone up front shouts. The caravan slows. You squint. Something on the horizon. A dot? No, a shimmer. It could be a mirage, sure, but the guide's posture has changed. People are smiling. Someone uncorks a water skin. You start to believe. It's a well, a real one. You don't run. You can't. But your pace quickens. As you near, the smell hits you first. Dampness, earth, life. The water is drawn from a deep stone shaft by pulley and rope, and it's the most beautiful bucket you've ever seen. Your hands tremble as you cup the first handful. It's warm. It's murky. It tastes like heaven. For now, you're safe. For now, you've made it. But you wouldn't last a day out here alone. You lie back on the cooling sand, the last light of day brushing your face with a soft, fading gold. Around you, the quiet hum of desert life settles. Camels breathing slow and deep, distant murmurs of travelers sharing tea, and the gentle creak of leather straps swaying in the breeze. The sky deepens into velvet blue, and the stars begin to bloom again, quiet and eternal. Your body is sore, but still. Your mind, stretched thin by days of sun and sand, starts to soften at the edges. Thoughts slow, muscles release. The tension lifts, one dusty knot at a time. You feel the air now, cool against your skin, calm and gentle, brushing past like the ghost of a forgotten lullaby. Somewhere, someone chuckles softly at an old joke. A camel groans, unimpressed. The sand cradles you like an ancient blanket, and you close your eyes. You made it, not because you were prepared or strong or wise, but because you kept going. And now, in this stillness, nothing chases you. No sun, no thirst, no fear, just rest. Let go, sink down, drift. the desert will keep watch tonight.